Hi everyone, we are going back to school, and with back to school always comes a question that, I'm not gonna lie, breaks my heart a little bit, and that is, how do you keep from losing your voice at school? Or the opposite, what do you do when you have lost your voice at school? Now, personally, I am a vocalist, and so that question pains me. When I hear it, I'm like, oh my God. And I thought maybe I was crazy because I heard it so many times in so many different Facebook groups from so many different people. It's just such a hot topic that I asked one of my friends who is, we went to college together, but she is a private vocal coach. And she was like, what? And I was like, okay, it's not just me. Like it's painful to me to hear that. So I'm gonna address this today, and hopefully this will help you to not lose your voice and just, you know, have a good healthy year. Now, if you're like, who's this random girl talking to me about this? Hi, my name is Becca. I'm an elementary music teacher, and in my whole elementary music career, I have only lost my voice one time, and that was because I was sick and not because of overuse. I'm also, again, a trained vocalist, so, you know, in college I studied voice and had years and years of voice training and choir, and I still sing in choirs when there's not a pandemic, and all of these different things that kind of build upon to where I very much consider myself a vocalist. And part of that is like, you have to take care of your voice. That's like an athlete being like, oh, what do you do when you break your arm? Anyway, if you're in that boat, first of all, I'm not, you know, shaming you at all. It happens, I understand. And especially if you are not a vocalist, then that happens, I would imagine, even more because you're just not used to it quite as much. So in this video, we're going to talk about tips to help you make sure that you're not losing your voice. Some of them are going to be super obvious. Some of them are going to be a little bit weirder. Just bear with me. Take what you want, leave whatever you don't want. And here's my disclaimer. I am not a doctor. I am an elementary music teacher. These are things I've learned from my experience and or my pedagogy classes and or my vocal training, and not actual medical advice. Please seek an medical doctor if you need actual medical advice and something is wrong, and you can always go to an ear, nose, and throat guy, and he can help you out much more than I can. With that being said, here's a couple things that help me to not lose my voice, especially at the beginning of the year. All right, number one is to learn how to breathe and talk correctly. I know you're like, did you seriously just say that? Yes. So if you are talking correctly, that means you are speaking in a supportive way. So make sure that, you know, you're breathing through your diaphragm, which is down here. Your belly should move when you breathe and not your shoulders. If you're breathing like, that means you're taking really shallow breaths. Even as I did that, like I can only feel it up here. Instead, you want to make sure your shoulders are staying still and you're breathing from your belly and a nice big like. Now, one great thing about teaching elementary music is that that's things that kids should be doing too, which means you can use some of those kind of things and lots of different, you know, like breath techniques, breathing techniques with your kiddos, and it's going to help both them and it will also help you. So learn how to make sure you're breathing correctly. Number two is that you want to make sure you're talking correctly. So I don't know if you can tell by how I'm talking. I don't take this to the extreme, but when I talk, I use a lot of breath and I almost sing. And when I get louder, I don't yell, I usually sing. So if it's like, Johnny's not sitting down, I'm not yelling at him. I'll be like, Johnny, sit down. Johnny, sit down. And it's more supportive rather than like yelling. I don't yell. I don't yell at my students, but I will, you know, use louder voices when you need to, or if they're, you know, doing something loud and you just need to sometimes. Make sure it is a very supportive, very from your belly movement that you are doing. If you are like, I have no idea what on earth this girl's talking about, I seriously recommend like go take a couple of voice lessons and it will change your life. I promise you. I promise you. But whether or not you want to take voice lessons, you can do stretches and warm-ups with your kiddos. That's going to help both you and your kiddos, and really make sure that you're, again, using that breath support, that you are talking kind of up here. You don't want that vocal fry, which is like talking way down here. That's going to kill your voice. Make sure you're talking up here so that you're not, you know, destroying your vocal cords. Please. And there's tons. You can just type in like breathing exercises, choir warm-ups, those kind of things into YouTube, and there's a bajillion of different ones that will come up. So just check it out and see what you got. Number 2 is stop talking. Now, obviously not all the time, but try not to talk when you don't need to. So there's a couple of different parts of that. Number 1, if you are singing a song and you're singing it over and over and over and over and over again because it's a game song, the kids should learn it and then they should sing it and you should stop singing. So I'll sing, you know, a lot at the beginning of the year and I kind of wean myself off. And usually when we play a game with a song, I'll sing the first couple of times and then I'll have them pick it up from there because they can learn it after a few different times. Maybe 5, maybe 8, but they'll get there pretty quickly. And so my goal is to have the kids singing and not me singing. A lot of people are very like, I don't sing with the kids, and that is what I do think you should strive for, but honestly I'm not very good at. And so I try not to sing with the kids, just sing, you know, I sing and then you sing, but it does happen because I'm human and I enjoy singing with other people. Yeah, so make sure the kids learn the song so that they can carry it. They should be singing it more than you should. A little hack that I have found, especially with all of the pandemic craziness, is if you can actually record yourself. So I will record my songs on my phone and I can play that so that I then don't have to sing over and over and over again the same song, especially if you're playing a game, especially if you're, you know, doing instruments along with it where the kids maybe aren't as super focused, or if it's a new song, or like last year I had the kids, you know, they're so spread out that they were so far away that like the kids in the back couldn't even hear me. And so having a recording made it so that they could hear me really well. Now in class I have, you know, like my fancy Bluetooth speakers that I adore, but if I have to go to their classrooms, I use this little speaker. So this is actually the one that stays here, but I have the same one in like teal because it matches my classroom. And it is the best Bluetooth speaker. It is so good. It is so loud, which was my main concern because I had one in the past that was super cheap and super quiet. But this one is super, super loud. The reason I got it is because the speaker goes all the way around. So I was like, okay, if it's not very loud, I can at least put it in the middle of the room and then we have, you know, a better chance of being heard. But it's so loud that I don't ever have to worry about that. And so I just record on my voice notes app on my phone and play it through that, and it is a great time. I will also say it has a charging cable. I used the blue one every single day for like 2 months in class, and then I used it in my office for like 2 months. Now obviously not every day all day, but for a lot of the time, and I charged it once in those 4 months. So highly recommend. It's from Amazon. I will link it down below. It also has a carrying case, which I thought was super helpful for the one that's at school because I was carrying it around the school to go to different classrooms last year. The second part of the stop talking is that, well, first of all, if you keep talking, the kids will just tune you out and not listen anyway, but nonverbal cues are always going to be better. So anytime that I can, instead of just saying, you know, unzip your jacket, I'll just look at a kid and do this, and they usually figure out what I'm talking about. When I want them to get in a circle, I'm not telling people to move. I literally just do this, which they know means watch me. And then I just point, and then I point where I want you to go. And then the kids move. They also get really, really quiet because they have to pay attention to you, and because you are being quiet, so then they're more quiet. The more you can do things like that, the better. Now obviously it's not going to work for everything, but it does work for a lot of stuff. So instead of talking, think of how you can replace some of your most common things with non-talking things. How can you just kind of cut out a couple of things and keep going? If you can cut out some of the talking, first of all, you'll get a lot more music in, and secondly, the kids will learn more, and thirdly, it'll be better for your voice. So see where you can kind of minimize, like look at your transitions, see where you can kind of minimize those talking points, and you know, move on so the kids are actively making music and you are not talking all the time. Number 3 is do not talk over the kids or over the music. So one of the biggest culprits, I believe, of losing your voice is when you're doing a lot of talking over instruments or talking over kids. The kids should get quiet before you talk. And I know that some of you are sitting there laughing because you feel like that's impossible. I promise you it's not, but they do need to be trained in order to do that. And when I say I promise you it's not, I promise you, like, I do not teach at a magical school. I teach at one of those schools where other people in my county are like, why the heck do you teach there? And I'm like, because I love the kids. But my point being, it's not that my kids are magical. It's that I am training them to be quiet so that they can hear me, so that I don't have to talk super loud. So part of that is that I don't talk super loudly so that they have to be quiet to be able to hear me. Part of it is that I do lots of like call and response. So one that I do is just class yes. That's a really easy one. I'll say class, they say yes, and they have to look at me and be quiet. And then they match however I do it. So if I do class, class, they say yes, yes. If I say class, they say yes. Easy, easy peasy, and you can do it anywhere. My favorite one though is my chimes. So I have a set of chimes, and what I do is I just ring the chimes. And when I ring the chimes, the kids put their hands up until the sound stops. I love this because they really have to listen to figure out when the sound stops, and also because it really helps to get their attention, and it takes a little bit longer, so it kind of like brings the room to a calmer place, and that helps a lot. All of these things make sure that I can get the kids quiet before I start talking. If the kids start talking, when you start talking, then if it's just one, you kind of give them a signal, or, you know, use whatever your classroom management strategy is. But if it's more than one, do it again and make a point of it. So one of our rules in music is we are respectful. So it's be respectful. And so I'll stop and, you know, do the whole thing. And I'm like, okay, is it respectful to talk when other people are talking? And they're like, no. I'm like, great. So make sure that you're quiet when I'm talking, especially because I'm telling you how to play the game or how to play the instruments or whatever we're gonna do. And if you don't know how to do it, you're not gonna be able to do it. And so we always have that in the back of our minds of like, you can't do the fun stuff if you can't listen. So make sure that you are getting them quiet. If they start talking, get them quiet again. They will, and they can be trained to be quiet before you start talking. I promise, it is possible. It's harder with some classes than others, but it is possible. The second thing is it is so tempting to talk over instruments. Like, all right, now it's your turn. Oh, we're doing this. No, over here. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it, because it's just too loud. And then you're having to be extra loud, and then the kids are confused, and you're messing up the musicality, and now it's not as musical, and it's just bad all around. So don't do it. It's gonna kill your voice. Have them stop and then do it. If you're playing music, I always tell the kids we don't talk when the music's on. So I'm not going to talk when the music's on. So while the music's on, you know, if we're listening to something, I'm not going to talk. You're not going to talk. We're all going to be quiet and listen, because that's the whole point. When they're playing instruments, I'm not talking over the instruments, because usually they can't hear you anyway, and it just ends up being bad. So we come to a Magic X. Magic X is silent. So like if we're using sticks or mallets, they cross them. If we're using something else, that I literally, like if we're holding a maraca, I'll have them do like maraca and then like hand. Magic X is quiet, and so they know that that's when I'm going to tell them whatever they need to know. I'm not just gonna start talking over the instruments, because they're not gonna be able to hear me. I'm just gonna strain my voice, and it's just bad all around. No one wants that. Number 4 is make sure you're drinking water, but not just that you're drinking water. Drink water early and often. I read somewhere that it takes 40 minutes, an hour, I don't remember, but it takes a long time for the water to get from like you drinking the water to actually helping your vocal folds to be covered and coated and all that good stuff. It takes a while for that to happen. So make sure that you're drinking water early in the morning. I drink water first thing when well, no, that's not true. I get up and I work out, and then I drink water after that because I'm usually really thirsty. And then I try to drink an entire bottle of water on my way to school. So I'm kind of, it's almost like I'm trying to like get all the water in as soon as I can, so that I'm a little bit more, you know, hydrated throughout the day. So I try to do a whole bottle on the way to school. I do have a 30-minute commute, so that does change. You know, if you're like 5 minutes away, that's probably not gonna happen. But that's something that helps me. So I have, you know, I drink a whole bottle of water, I go to school, I have my duty post, and so it's about an hour before that first class. So by the time I get to 3rd grade, like we are ready to go, and we're rocking and rolling, and I'm feeling nice and hydrated. Also make sure that you like keep that up, especially on the weekends, because I often find that how hydrated I feel on a certain day has to do with how much I had yesterday. So if I am going to do something really strenuous, like if we're going on a hike, then the day before we go on a hike, I make sure that I'm drinking lots of water, so that the day of the hike, I'm like a little bit more on top of things. The other thing is to make sure you're drinking all throughout. I have read that, again, I'm not a doctor, I don't know, but I've read that drinking water consistently throughout the day is better than like chugging it. So though I do have, you know, my 1 bottle of water at the morning over 30 minutes, so not like chugging it, then I make sure that I drink it at certain times. I personally like to have like a couple of things in my mind. I don't have one of those, you know, those water bottles that are like have the times on them. I don't have that, but in my brain I know that like I should have a bottle of water on my way to school. I should have a bottle of water in my first set of classes before planning. I should have a bottle of water during planning and lunch, because those are like combined for me, and then I should have a bottle of water in the afternoon and a bottle of water on the way home. So I should have, that's a lot. That's a lot. I didn't realize it was that much. So I drink at least 5 bottles of water plus whatever I drink when I get home. This is really helpful because if I get to, you know, my planning and I'm like, oh, I'm only halfway through my water, then I'm like, oh crud, you know, I can tell that I'm behind. So just have those little checkpoints to you. You don't have to drink that many bottles of water, but do have those checkpoints. And if you're one of those people who are like, I don't like water, my best advice honestly is just to get over it. But my second best advice would be to get some drink packets, get some tea, get some something so that you are staying hydrated even if you don't like the taste of water. And also just drink it because you have to, you know, you gotta eat your broccoli. You gotta have to. I had a kid ask me one time, they were like, what's the worst part about being an adult? And I was like, well, you know, the best part about being an adult is that no one tells you what to do. But the worst part about being an adult is that no one tells you what to do. She was like, what? And I was like, well, because no one's gonna tell me to go to sleep. But if I don't go to sleep, then I'm gonna be tired. So I have to make myself go to sleep. It's not fun. Same thing with water. You need to make sure you're drinking water, and no one's gonna force you, but you have to do it or you will suffer the ramifications. The next one's a little bit weird, and that is listen to podcasts, specifically in the car. Now, why I'm saying this is because if you have a longer commute, like I have, you know, 30 minutes, if you're like an hour and a half, ooh, I'm so sorry. It can be tempting to, you know, like listen to music on the way home. And obviously I love music, like I'm a music teacher, but if you are singing in the car on top of singing for 8 hours a day, that can be a lot. And so instead, see if you can listen to a podcast or listen to an audiobook so that you have, you know, the 30 minutes in the car in the morning, 30 minutes in the afternoon, you are kind of on vocal rest almost. You're resting your voice during those periods because you're listening. So you're not talking, you're not singing, you're listening. That's just a really simple way to make sure that you have periods of time where you aren't talking and you just have those sections where you are listening or you're just, you know, again, not talking. Having that vocal rest makes a difference. Now, I know not everyone can do that depending on how you get to school, how you get home, if you have kids in the car, all of that kind of stuff. There are kid-friendly podcasts you could totally listen to with them. But if it is an option, that might be something that you find helpful. It's certainly something that I find helpful. So just something to think about. Number 6 is when you're not gonna want to hear, and that is make sure you're eating healthy food and exercising. Woohoo! My choir teacher in high school used to always compare us to athletes, and it drove me bonkers because the girl's not an athlete. But I did find that as I was eating healthier, because in college I really had a shift where I was like, okay, I need to eat healthier now, and starting to work out, that it did get a lot easier for me to sing and to sing a lot because I sing a lot and I sang a lot in college. And so just really making sure you have that healthy diet and that exercise, it's gonna help you not be sick as much, and sickness is a way you can lose your voice. It's gonna help your vocal folds to feel better, and just, you know, you just gotta do it. You just have to do it. I'm just gonna leave it at that. And all right, 2 more. The next one is don't yell at the kids. Just really don't yell at the kids. There are times where you need to use your teacher voice, but don't yell at the kids because yelling is just gonna hurt your voice. Usually the kids do not respond well to it, and it's just a whole big thing. Specifically, I will say that as a music teacher, you know, I teach all of the classes, which means that I get to see kind of what all the different teachers' classroom management styles are. And the classrooms where they yell all the time, the kids just tune them out. Like, they don't even listen at all because they just yell all the time. So they just don't listen to them at all. And you don't want that to be the case with you. I've also had kids at the end of the year. I had a 5th grader, and I did like a little survey at the end of their post-test, and I said, you know, is there anything else you want me to know? And she said, I really liked that you never yelled at us. I was like, what? Like, that's what you want to tell me, is that you're glad I never yelled at you? Like, oh my gracious. I mean, I'm glad that you felt, you know, better in my class, but oh my gosh, like, because that must mean that she's getting yelled at all the time, and like, that is not okay. Don't yell at your students. They don't respond to it. They won't listen to you, I promise. Instead, save that teacher voice for important occasions, important being like dangerous situations, and don't yell at the students. In fact, if you get quieter, they have to listen to you more intently, which means they have to get quieter too. Train them to stop talking and don't yell. The very last one I'm gonna say is that if it hurts, stop. If you are teaching and you feel your voice going out, stop. Record some songs so that you can play them for the kids. Maybe, you know, watch a video instead of doing a certain class if they have extra, you know, lots and lots of songs in them. Have the kids sing without you. Do something so that you are not singing and talking on a not so good voice, you know? It's like if you twisted your ankle, you don't want to keep going and hurt it. You need to heal it before you can continue. So it's the same thing with your voice. If it's hurting, stop. If it's hurting because you're yelling, stop yelling. If it's hurting just from overuse, make sure that you're using your diaphragm, make sure you're using your breath support, make sure that you're not talking over people, you're not talking too loudly, all of that kind of stuff. Just make sure that you are taking care of it early, because if you can stop early and do a couple things to just make life a little bit easier, you know, in the interim, it's going to be a lot better than like completely losing your voice and then being like, well, crud, now what do I do? All right, friends, I know that was a lot. I hope it was helpful. They should be pretty tangible things, and hopefully you have a voice. You don't lose your voice this year. That's what I'm going for. Hopefully you don't lose your voice this year, because that's just not okay. It's just not fun. And so really make an effort to make sure that happens. Treat your body like an athlete. That's all I have to say. Oh, that's not all I have to say. And one more comment. With the masks, if you are watching this during 2021 with the pandemic and the masks and everything, it is harder with the mask because you have to speak a little bit louder. So really make sure you're doing that breath support. You're using times where you don't have to talk. Maybe you have the kids watch a recording of someone else reading a book instead of you reading a book to them. You know, just any of those little things that can help. Again, you know, if you can record it and make it louder, that's gonna help save your voice. Just anything you can do to help, especially with those masks, is really helpful. My final thought is that if you want professional results, that you should see a professional. So you could go see a doctor, or the other thing is that you could get a microphone. That's a very common thing. I personally don't have a microphone in my classroom, but I know that's a very common thing with other elementary music teachers. You can get some on Amazon. You can get some really, you know, ones you just hang around your neck that amplify your voice a little bit. So I highly recommend you look into that if that is a continual problem that you have. All right, friends, I hope that you have an excellent year and that you are not losing your voice. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you next time. Bye.